Hello, and this is King here with another Raid Shadow Legends video. And today I'm doing another block damage team using Helicath and this guy, Goffred Brassclad. Now this guy here will be quite interesting. The good thing about this guy is that he brings block damage for the stun hit, and along with that he can also bring decreased defense. So what I do with him is I turn off his A2 and his A3, but we'll get into that in a minute. So this team here, I thought I would build just because it was quite interesting and I wanted to see how much damage I could get out of them. Now, I just re-geared Farrakhan the Fat and I just built Dark Kale for this team. I have not even tested it, so hopefully I set my speeds correctly. I will go into that and find that out in just a second. Doom Priest, however, in her slot, you don't need Doom Priest. You've got a lot of other options you can bring. So you could bring in somebody like who does a cleanse and a block debuff for 2 turns, like a that new fusion, the Pythion. You could bring in Rio Bone Spear or anybody like that, but not needed, because what you can also do is if you're not fighting against Spirit Affinity, you can just bring in another DPS champion, and then one of your DPS champions will be the stun target. If you are going against Spirit Affinity, you either need to cleanse or you need a block debuffs. And the great, amazing thing is that Doom Priest, I think it's Doom Priest slot, is that Doom Priest is a little bit slower than, I think it's Dark Kale, the fast DPS. No, that's Farrakhan the Fat, he's the fast DPS. So what you can actually do is you can bring a block debuff for 1 turn champion on Farrakhan the Fat, and you can get them to place it after the just before the clan boss does his AoE 2, which would be the decreased speed for Spirit Affinity, which means that'll make you Spirit Affinity friendly. And then you just need to make sure that your other 2 DPS champions are going to be, one of them is going to be the stun target. So in this sense, if we had, say for example, where is he? Trying to remember his name now. I think, here we go, Grizzled Jarl. So Grizzled Jarl, he has here increased defense and block debuffs. Block debuffs on all allies for 1 turn on a 3-turn cooldown. So what you can do is you can bring Grizzled Jarl into Farrakhan the Fat spot, and just make sure that Grizzled Jarl has maybe Steadfast, so that way he doesn't take the stun and Kale does, or just put Kale in the lead. And then that way Kale and Farrakhan the Fat, they will take the stun, because you don't want Helicath or Goffred to take the stun, and whoever places your block debuffs for 1 turn, they can't take the stun. So you're going to be a little bit smart with your affinity choosing for your DPS champions. And then if you choose Doom Priest, who just has that cleanse on every single one of her turns, and she also brings in an increased attack, then all you have to do is just make sure that one of your DPS is Spirit Affinity, because after the stun, Helicath will take a turn before Doom Priest gets the cleanse off. So it's important that you got someone else, some other Spirit Affinity taking the stun there. Now as for a swap for Helicath, you might be able to use an unkillable champion, but I don't know how well that syncs up with Goffred's passive. We'll get into the team now. I'll show you some stuff with them. I'll show you the speeds and all of that, and then we'll get into the run. So with this team here we go. We got Farrakhan the Fat. Actually, we'll start off with the fastest. So the fastest is Goffred. He's at 255 speed. Now the thing about Goffred and Helicath is that you just got to make sure that Goffred is faster than Helicath, and Goffred's speeds, to make him affinity friendly, needs to be between 253 to 263. So what I like to do is, if I just minus one of those on by each, so if I said his speed was 254 to 262, then no matter what the true speed is, if you're using a speed set, you're inside the range. So that's what you really need to aim for. And you'll notice a lot of my champions here only have 70% critical rate. That's because Farrakhan the Fat brings the increased critical rate as well as the increased critical damage. So then Goffred, I've just got 70% critical rate, a little bit of damage, a little bit of defense, and of course accuracy to place the decreased defense on his A1. And then I've turned off his A2 and his A3 because we don't need them for a block damage team. As for Helicath, Helicath's speed's at between 251 and 262, but again try and aim for that 252 to 261 and just make sure that Helicath is slower than Goffred and you'll be sweet. With Helicath, all I've done with my Helicath, because he's usually in a really good speed comp for my 2-to-1 block damage team, so I just swapped out one item piece so that way he wasn't placing his toxic set. But with Kale's A1 I probably could have kept the toxic set, but whatever. So his speeds and gear is just, you know, all he needs is the speed and the accuracy, because he will also be placing the weaken on his A1. Now as for the A2, if you're fighting against nightmare difficulty, I would suggest having the shield turned on, but for ultra nightmare I would turn it off because the A1 does bring more damage and you get more hits to make sure that weaken goes down. So yes, now then after that, the next fastest champion is actually going to be one of your DPS slots, your fast DPS slot in Farrakhan the Fat. So he's currently at 200 speed, but he can be anywhere between, it's about 195 to 213, but again, bring those in one, so aim for 196 to 212 and you should be right. Now his increased critical rate, increased critical damage does not go onto himself, so you really want his critical rate up higher and accuracy higher so that way he can get the poison and HP burn. He's also got a decreased defense on his A1, but Goffred's got it, so it doesn't really need it. You don't need that on your DPS champions. Then after that you've got Doom Priest. So the Doom Priest slot is just the cleanse. If you're using a cleansing champion, like you could also bring in a Bad Alcazar and then just have somebody else take the stun hit. But the problem with Bad Alcazar cleansing the spirit decreased speed is that being force affinity, he will be taking the stun hit. And then you won't be able to cleanse that off, and then that'll throw out your rotation. So you've got to be real careful with who you choose. But the good thing about Doom Priest is that her passive will remove a random debuff at the start of Doom Priest's turn, so they will still get their turn and everything will be right. So on a nice easy passive. So she's just got a little bit of attack, a decent amount of critical damage, and alright critical rate. But again, her speed can be anywhere between 187 and 189, so it's a very tight speed. This is the tightest speed there is. It's much better if you try and aim at that 188, because then you know you're right and you're not going to mess up your rotation. And then lastly, you got your slow DPS. Now I got Dark Kale in here because he's got the poison sensitivity, the extend debuffs, and some activation. Also a 3-hitter. So I thought it would be interesting. Hopefully I get some good damage out of him. I have not actually really used him in a clan boss comp, so it's kind of exciting to finally use him. So he's got plenty of accuracy, very good critical damage, solid critical rate, decent attack, and his speed is at 188. Now, Dark Kale's speed can be anywhere between 186 and 189, but again, he does need to be slower than Doom Priest. So if Doom Priest is at 188, it's always best to bring in the slow DPS under that. Again, they can go all the way down to 186, but again, if you keep them in that like 187 to 188, you should be pretty right. Also a little bit tight, but it is really nice when you're not going against Spirit Affinity to actually just have in 3 pure DPS champions. It's actually really cool for such a slow speeds on your 3 DPS, high speeds on your block damage champions, but again, their stats are not that important because they're not bringing out a whole lot of damage. Now Helicath, the reason why we've chosen him is because he's got the block damage for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. And Goffred, he's got this passive active effect. If an ally is about to get killed by a fatal hit, blocks incoming damage and places block damage buff on them for 1 turn. Now, I don't know what happens if you pair him with an unkillable champion. I don't know if it'll read and go, oh, they're about to die, we'll place block damage on them, even though they already have unkillable. I'm not 100% sure. So you can test it. I can't test it. I don't have the unkillable champion to test it. But yeah, as for using a Helicath, you can make sure that this will never happen during the A1 and A2 and will only ever happen during the stun hit. And if you build your stun targets really squishy, like really good attack-based champions, like Farrakhan the Fat, Dark K, or Doom Priest, then that means that this passive will come into effect a lot sooner during the clan boss fight, which means Helicath with his passive, where he counter-attacks with a default skill, while anyone under a block damage buff is hit. That means even after the stun hit, he'll get a counterattack. And that's really cool, because that means he's in 3 counterattacks all the time. So that's the team. That's why we've chosen these champions. Again, you could bring in any sort of block debuff champion instead of Doom Priest, as long as they're in Farrakhan's speed tune. I think another good one is, I can't remember them off by the heart. It's a rare champion. Plenty of rare champions to use. But yeah, a lot of options there. As for the setup is nothing. I've just optimized it by turning Goffred's A2 and A3 off and turning Helicath's A2 off. I did prioritize Dark Kale, but I don't think I need to. But you can literally just chuck this team in, as long as you put them in the right team order. So Goffred and Helicath right at the back, so they don't take the stun hit. As long as you've got that sorted, then this team will work. You don't need a preset or anything, which is actually really cool. It's full auto right from the start, which makes the team really, really easy to do. So Helicath just does this block damage right from the start, and then when turn 4, after the clan boss stun, Helicath will get into rotation and have his 2 turns in the after the stun hit, and you'll be block damage from then on. And as for Brassclad, his is a passive, so as long as he's getting 4 turns, which he will have his double turn after the AoE 2, that way he doesn't lose the block damage from Helicath, then everything will work out in tune. And it should be very, very awesome. Now, I did run this team with a author, but not with the build Farrakhan the Fat is on, and I don't think it was with Doom Priest either. I can't quite remember now. And that team there hit some pretty good damage, just shy of a 1 key. And because we got a spirit affinity, I didn't really want to bring a author in. I wanted to try out Dark Kale. Not someone who I've ever really used, so it was really, really keen for that. As for the gear and all that, we'll run through that at the end of the fight. Hopefully this team hits about 60 mil. As you could imagine, if you had it really set up and the gears up properly, because even though Farrakhan the Fat is in a pretty good set, I think he's in a reflex set, he still won't keep the increased critical rate up all of the time. I actually wanted to make their builds, their builds are good, but I didn't want to put some insane gear on and actually do an easy 1 key. I tried to make the gear realistic in terms of damage and stats. So I thought if I go 70% critical rate with Farrakhan the Fat's buff, then it sort of evens out, because they won't all have increased critical rate all the time. And then I can also just, sub the gear a little bit, and maybe this is what some other people like you guys might run. Watching this here might be a cool team if you have Goffred and if you've got Helicath. Yeah, it's really, really cool. So Helicath and Goffred, all they need is speed, accuracy. That's all they need. If you can pick up, say, a bit of damage out of them, then that's awesome, because they can do damage. They're both defensive based, but when Helicath's block damage drops off, they'll get an increased defense, so that's good. Of course, I already forgot his name again. This guy, what's his name? Goffred. He has increased defense in his kit, but it's not something you really want to waste an ability on. So yeah, they're probably the hardest builds because of how ridiculously fast you got to get them, that 250-ish speed. But we'll run the team, we'll see how it goes. This is what I was saying, like if Doom Priest was super weak, like if she had no HP and no defense, then really early on in the clan boss fight, Goffred's passive would activate and put that block damage on her, which would be good for getting all those extra attacks from Helicath. As for the blessings, I also try to choose champions that had little to no blessings. Unfortunately, 3 of them do have blessings. I farm Iron Twins every day because I think it's a long-term dungeon. It's not a short-term dungeon. It's designed to take a long time. And over time I've just got some blessings. I think Doom Priest, she has a 3-star. I think Dark Kale has a 1-star and Helicath a 2-star. So Helicath I've got Brimstone on. Doom Priest and Dark Kale I think I've got Phantom Touch on. So nobody's got Cruelty, which I think is possibly the best possible blessing you can get for Clan Boss, especially if you're bringing in raw damage. I think I done a video when they first came out called Blessings in Disguise, and it took one of my teams that done like 75 mil per run all the way up to like 90 mil per run, and it was pretty much all Cruelty. I did have Brimstone, but I think I worked that out to only bring like 4 mil of the damage or something like that, and Cruelty brought the rest of it. Absolutely insane blessing Cruelty is, especially for Clan Boss, because it pretty much, if you got it at a 6-star, it brings everybody in pretty much with savage gear just from that one blessing. But even at a 1-star, it helps a lot, especially over a long fight, especially if you're getting counter attacks, ally attacks, or even 2-to-1 ratio and that sort of stuff. So the damage isn't quite as good as I was hoping it was going to be. I do believe that my Aortha team was actually doing a little bit more damage, but then when I was running him I got quite unlucky with the weak hits. But yeah, the team should be pretty good. It'll be block damage the whole time, so you have nothing to really worry about. Doom Priest will take some damage being a stun target, but when you get later to the fight, you know, the passive of Goffred is always in play because he's always taking the 4 turns, so his cooldown's getting reset all perfectly, so there's nothing there to worry about. We will skip or cut to the end, and I guess we'll see how much damage we've done. I'm hoping for more than 60 million. With the gear, the stats, and the champions I chose, I think I should hit 60, and I don't think I'll hit a 1 key. It looks like I'm going to be about 60 mil. I hope. That's what I built the team to do, about 60 mil. If I wanted to get a 1 key, then I could have just brought in like a Lord Shazar for DPS. He would just smack and hit like crazy. Or I could have brought, you know, a number of champions in to be able to get a 1 key damage. I could have brought a Cruzier in, but it's not what I was going for with this video, so hopefully we get to about that 60 million and you can see that you can actually do some really good damage. And if it's not on Spirit Affinity, you can just take one of your DPS champions to take the stun hit, and you can run 3 pure DPS champions. And even being a low level player with lower gear, as long as you got Masteries on everybody and some decent gear on your 3 DPS champions, you will actually get pretty close, if not a 1 key. So it is a really friendly team. It's just the 2 high speed champions, and if you bring them with accuracy, then you don't have to worry about any debuffs, as in weaken and decrease defense on any of your DPS champions, which saves a really good slot. Don't get me wrong, Fane and Anax are amazing for damage, but even better if you don't need to bring. So you could bring in like a Rhonda for the magic one. You could bring in a Lord Shazar for the spirit one. And then now you're talking. Now you got lots of damage. And then you can also even bring in another ally attack champion, like a Longbeard, who brings extra damage, or a Farrakhan the Fat, who brings the buffs. And then you're talking a lot of damage, over 1 key damage with those champions. Anyway, as I was saying, we'll skip to the end, and then we'll go through the champion builds and their gear and their masteries. Catch you guys at the end there. So here's the team here coming to an end. Definitely going to fall short of that 60 mil that I was hoping for. So Aortha actually brought in a lot better and a lot more damage than Dark Kale did. I'll run this team, the exact same team again, but with Aortha. Right now, why the clan boss is Spirit Affinity. And I'll show you the damage that can do, even though Aortha would be weak Affinity. And I think he would get to 60. Well, I'd hope so. Yeah, so he does a lot more damage than Dark Kale from the looks of it, even though Dark Kale's activating those poisons and all. Quite interesting, I didn't actually expect that. I thought Dark Kale would do better than Aortha, especially with the better builds that I've got on Farrakhan the Fat and whatnot. Very interesting. But yeah, so this is the team, getting to about 55 mil damage. Pretty solid work. Boom boom, 55.6. So we've got Farrakhan the Fat doing 13.6, Dark Kale doing 14.8, Doom Priest just under 6, Goffred 7.5, and Helicath 13.5. Very cool. So we'll jump into the champions and we'll have a look. So we've got Helicath, it's just in a bit of a broken set. Broke up his Toxic, so that way he would be all good. As for his Masteries, I've just picked up War Master, and I've had to pick up Law of the Steel to get his speed tuned correctly, and then I also got Sniper. Not really necessarily needed for any of these, but really just picking up the War Master. And on all these champions, because it is a block damaged team, Heart of Glory is the mastery you really want to go for. Like I was saying, he's got a 2-star blessing, picking up Brimstone, and that's the gear. Then we go to Goffred. Here we go. Goffred Brassclad. Brassclad? So he's in 2 speed sets and a critical rate set. He's got a counter attack banner on him. Would be nice to put the counter attack everything on him. That would be pretty sweet. So he was coming in at 3800 defense, 130% critical damage, so quite low, but I just got enough accuracy and enough speed, and that's all that really mattered. Again, I picked up Law of Steel to get the extra speed to help that along. He's gone down this side here because I did set him up to try and solo Bommel, but of course that would not and did not work, naturally, because he's not quite as good as Gem Cursed. Again, his abilities do not really matter. So this here is more so the mastery that I want to go for with him. There we go. That's the mastery I much prefer for him. Yeah, very good. We don't want any of this turn meter stuff. Always avoid the turn meter stuff, and we definitely don't need Cycle of Magic. So that's his mastery setup, which would be great for him. Again, picking up Heart of Glory, picking up War Master, Law of Steel, and Sniper, and the extra accuracy. And all of a sudden, his build is going to be a little bit better. 250 accuracy. Woo! Funny, I looked at that before the battle. And then after that, we got 3 epics. So we got Doom Priest with Phantom Touch. I just broke up her Relentless set as well and picked up a speed set to make her fit this speed tune. So she's at 4.2k attack, 89 critical rate, 173 critical damage. As for her masteries, it's set up to counter attack. Here we go, has a 20% chance to counter attack when an enemy places a stun. So I got that there on her for my main team, where I do use Doom Priest. But again, on any other affinity for this team, that would also come into play. And even the Retribution would come into play at the start, which would be quite nice. Again, just picking up Heart of Glory all the way down, and picking up War Master. And you'll notice that even my attack-based champions, and all of them, I go Deadly Precision. I never go Blade Disciple. Now some people say, if you got the critical rate, just go Blade Disciple, you get 75 extra attack. Yes, that's true, but The problem with that is that, you know, we move gear around all the time. And what if the new gear you're going, you need that extra 5% critical rate? And I'm not going to spend 200 gems to reset just to get that 5% critical rate. So I prefer to always have the 5% critical rate, and then it's happy. If I go 5% over my crit cap, then that's fine. But if I'm under, I prefer to have it. So I always grab it regardless of the build that I can put on them. Then we go down, who else do we have? We had Dark Kale, who is quite underwhelming. Quite very underwhelming. But I have a feeling his build is maybe not up to scratch. He's got 4,700 attack, 238 critical damage, and plenty of accuracy. So he should have done some good work. 72 critical rate, yeah, maybe a bit low. But we did have the increased critical rate, so it should have worked out. Obviously he's got Giant Slayer, picked up Laura Steel, and I've also picked up Cycle of Magic because his abilities are not too critical when they happen, so that's fine to use there. His sets was just a lethal set, so we could try and knock out some serious damage. And then we had Farrakhan the Fat. Farrakhan the Fat is on a reflex set, and then I've also picked up Cycle of Magic. Bang. So that way he's trying to reset his abilities as often as he can, because he doesn't need to use the A1 because I got defense down from Goffred, so I actually never want him to use the A1 if only that were possible. Same offensive, obviously picking up the critical rate, hitting Heart of Glory and going straight down. Support, avoiding any turn meter ones, and that was all I done with him. Skills are all booked out as far as I can tell. He's got a couple counter-attack accessories, which helps with his damage. Now, as for Aortha, well, I've got you all here, and while we've got the free gear removal, I'll tell you what we'll do. Aortha has no blessings. We'll chuck all of that gear that we have got on young Dark Kale. We'll put it onto this guy, and then we'll do the run, and we'll see how well it ends up. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and I think it was Perception. Gauntlets and boots. Where are the boots? Here we go. That puts him at 188 speed. Yeah, that's the same speed, so hopefully it is. And I'm not going to check the I'm not going to completely check the speed tune to make sure it is right. I'm just going to hope for the best. Now with him, I'm going to turn off his A3. I'm going to use his A2, which attacks 4 times at random, and then his A1, which attacks 2 times. So you average that out, and that's 3 hits per ability. So I'm definitely going to be picking up Giant Slayer for him. Again, picking up Cycle of Magic to try and do that A2 as often as possible, and pretty much the same tree thereafter. Yep, that looks alright. Got some counter-attack accessories, that's nice. Alright, well let's run him into the team, and we'll see where that leads us. So if we take Dark Kale out, we'll take Farrakhan the Fat out, put in him because he's got the attack aura, and then put Farrakhan the Fat back in. Go into the setup, make sure Aortha doesn't use his A3, and we'll do the run, see how it goes. And so, oddly enough, I accidentally exited the other fight, forgetting I was recording. I was like, oh, I don't want to waste a clan boss key. But this here is a screenshot of the previous fight I had with Aortha, doing that 59.24 million. With Aortha getting nearly 15 mil, Farrakhan the Fat at 14.4, Goffred at 8, Helicath 14, and Dupree 6.5. So yeah, quite good Aortha. Really interesting. That was the exact same gear on Aortha. The only gear difference was Farrakhan the Fat was not on reflex gear, so I think the other fight would be better as long as the RNG works out and Aortha doesn't weak hit way too many times. And Goffred, as you've seen, we improved his Masteries just that tiny little bit, so he would also get a little bit more out of that. So yeah, that's the team, that's the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much for staying. Let me know what you think of this team and all of that in the comments. Yeah, and if any of you guys know the answer to whether Goffred's passive will activate with Unkillable, or if it will work the same as this with Unkillable, please do let me know, because that would be really cool if you could use, I think it's Sir Nicholas who has it after 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. Yeah, catch us go later.